I know, it's an unusual title. Why TRD? Why did Toyota take TRD, Toyota Racing Development, and turn it into something that they can slap onto just about everything they build? That's including this 2020 Toyota Avalon TRD. What does it mean now? Where did it come from? Well, in this video, I'm going to go over a little bit of the basics of the TRD past, bring it into the present, show you a little bit of the future, and just as importantly, show you this Toyota Avalon TRD. All right, I'm going to be brief on the history of Toyota Racing Development because it's a big hunkin' piece of history. Now, first of all, you have to keep in mind that it wasn't always known as TRD. We can go all the way back into the 1950s when Toyota actually started doing performance upgrades to vehicles. Now, back then, it was Toyota Technocraft. There was also Tosco Toyota Pet. These various names eventually molded themselves into TRD. All right, so TRD initially was building performance components for Toyotas, and it was a separate company. Then later on, it became part of Toyota. Now, at first, when it really became popular to have something TRD in your vehicle, it was everything from suspension components, brakes, superchargers, and that was pretty cool stuff. Progressively, it became more and more commonplace to call things TRD. That includes this car right here. And that's because people like having a performance version of pretty much everything that's out there. See this 3.5 liter V6? It puts out 301 horsepower and 267 pound-feet of torque. It's hooked up to an 8-speed automatic transmission, feeding the front wheels. Now, this is a TRD vehicle, but it doesn't mean that it necessarily has extra power, because it doesn't. It's basically the same as the regular Toyota Avalon, but they did add an exhaust package. But more importantly, it has suspension components, it has grippier tires, and it has that extra little beefy exhaust. Does that mean better off-the-line performance? It actually does. Most importantly, this vehicle is a work of suspension, brakes, and a body kit, along with a ton of badges, and that is essentially what TRD has become. Because if you look at all the cars, and almost every Toyota vehicle now has a TRD variant, with only a couple exceptions, that's including all the trucks, a lot of TRD vehicles out there are basically trim with maybe tires and wheels. Now, I mentioned TRD in terms of trucks as well, and that is a little bit different because really nice to have a locking rear diff, better suspension, better tires, better wheels, and all that for off-roading. But that's not the case with cars. Now, in terms of this vehicle, it's a styling thing for the most part, at least from the outside, because look what you get here. Starting from the front, they absolutely want to make sure that you know that there is front aero. And there is. I don't know how effective it is, but it certainly looks like it is because it sticks out, and God forbid you hit a low curb. Now, it does have this massive grille. This is one of the largest grilles I've seen on any vehicle. In fact, the only room here that's not taken up by a grill is just right here. This one section here where the headlights are and these little vents here. The thing is that most of this grill is not functional. Even though it looks kind of like a whale shark, just this little section up here is really the only open spot here where air comes into the radiator. Crazy, right? All of this, not so much. Let's continue on to the wheels. Now, these are 19-inch, and they do look pretty purposeful. And this is where the badge count starts. TRD, 4 wheels, 4 TRDs. Matters because people need to know that this is a TRD wheel. The good news is larger brakes, much more powerful brakes, and a full suspension system. So not only are we talking about different spring rates, we are talking about a slightly lowered car that has suspension underneath and a strengthened chassis. So it's more than just appearance. But coming back to the appearance, look down here. Oh yeah! You need that, especially this little gap right here. That is aerodynamic, baby. Then we continue with the badge count. There it is. So if you count both floor mats, that's an extra 2. So now we're up to 6. And then, ba-ba-bam! The seat. Both front seats have these. Now we're up to 8 TRD badges. But wait, there's more. That's right, TRD on the top, baby. Obviously, it's necessary to have a rear diffuser because power matters and performance matters, and so does the ability to suck yourself down to the ground. I don't know how effective this actually is, but it looks it. Now there's a tiny spoiler. Here's the good news. The Toyota Camry TRD has a massive rear wing. It just looks ridiculous. This at least is a little bit more tame. If there's any part of the Toyota TRD design ethic on this vehicle that's tame, it's the rear spoiler. Thank goodness, right? Now you guys missed one thing down here. Yep, that is proper TRD exhaust. I have talked to several people who work at TRD, and many of them say that in terms of throttle reaction, throttle response, that helps a little bit. So even though there's no measurable gains in terms of performance, it's a little bit sharper. Put your foot down, power is a little tiny bit more immediate. Something to keep in mind for those of you who are keeping score. Oh, speaking of score, we are up to 9. Boom! 10. That is a TRD right there, baby. And then, oh my goodness, I think we're up to 11 now, right? 11 TRD labels throughout the vehicle. And I have to add TRD right here on the exhaust on the side. So that grand total of badging comes to 13. But what does it all mean? What does all this TRD stuff mean? Pride in ownership, perhaps? A little bit of history? Because TRD back in the day, think of Iron Man Stewart going off-road in his TRD truck and winning like everything. And then you come back to this. It's kind of crazy, right? So I think that right now, TRD is for the ultimate Toyota fanboy or fan person. And this gives you an identity saying, I'm willing to pay a little bit more to have a vehicle that has these labels on there. It's a little bit more fun to drive. I gotta admit, this thing handles really good. I actually took one of these on a handling course. It was remarkably well balanced for such a big vehicle. By comparison, the regular Avalon feels almost sloppy. There's nothing wrong with the Avalon in regular driving, but this type of stuff, it was never really made for it. It certainly feels more direct. And control is really good by comparison. So all of the things that they've done to make this car handle better have definitely been accomplished. And I gotta admit, it is the most enjoyable Avalon to drive. That in itself is sort of saying something kind of weird, right? But that's because of the TRD. That's what they have done. They've actually taken it, made it more lively, a little bit more fun to drive. But what about the future? Well, TRD right now has a little bit of an identity crisis, and that's because Toyota also has GR, Gazoo Racing. And that's starting to be incorporated in some of their vehicles as well. And I think it's watering down TRD. So hopefully in the future they'll figure that out. And they'll find a way to make this a prominent brand component, or maybe they'll make it separate altogether. What about this vehicle? Well, this one, as I mentioned before, is basically an Avalon except for the suspension components, all the cool little external bits and pieces and tons of TRD badging. And on top of that, you get all of this stuff, this vehicle as equipped, for about $46,000. That's actually not too bad considering what you get for the money, if this type of performance matters to you in a vehicle that really does compete with the older Buick sedans. Go figure. Guys, thank you so much for joining me. I really enjoyed talking about TRD and my high hopes for their future. And at the same time, don't forget, if you want to have a slightly more enjoyable experience in a Toyota product, most likely they will have a TRD version available for you. Is it worth the money? That's the question.